Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's weekly energy boost. Finally, David is back in the studio with us after we begged and screamed and cried, and we heard all of you. I was also very sad. David is back with us this beautiful Monday morning, and we are talking about love for no reason. And for those of you who haven't heard that phrase thrown around in your universe, love for no reason is another way to say unconditional love. It's about our putting aside all the right reasons, all of the wrong reasons, and really expressing our nature. Obviously, we're going to unpack this today, but the reason for bringing it up in this day specifically, this week specifically, is that there is this energetic dust cloud that seems to be circulating that is giving us the opportunity to grow in this department, to look at the areas in our lives where maybe I have a really great example to use. I didn't think about it ahead of time, but now I have a really great example. Every week we try to bring in the wisdom and the tools that are going to help our listeners navigate the coming 7 days to the best of their ability. It's like looking at the map before you even set out and checking where are the potholes in the construction, where's the Starbucks that you want to stop by in the middle of the journey. That's really what we try to give our listeners every week. And this week sets us up to be triggered potentially by people who are classic annoyances or worse, right? We're not talking about being annoyed or being frustrated today. We're talking about genuine hate, disregard, intolerance. And anytime we're given the opportunity to behave that way, we're also given the opportunity to become inoculated from that behavior, to not even be compelled to think in those terms or to feel those feelings. So we want to understand this morning, in general, why does that happen to us? Why are there some people that are so difficult to love? Why are there some people that just don't awaken any compassion or don't deserve the benefit of the doubt from us? Obviously, there's people that it's really easy for us to overlook their shortcomings or their misdeeds or their mistakes. But sometimes it's just impossible to look the other way or turn the other cheek, so to speak. What I wanted to say, or maybe I'll save my example for afterwards because I know David is eager to unleash after having been so silent the last few weeks.
Well, I was taking some notes here, and I know that this week's energy also helps us cleanse out the residue of anger and hatred, which is the opposite of the unconditional love that you talked about. Because people hear sometimes unconditional love, they think, well, that's a nice concept, but what's in it for me? I think people get inspired. They wake up when they hear what's in it for them, as opposed to just a nice philosophical, intellectual discussion.
We are consumers.
Yep. We are consumers. So one thing to know is that when we're reactive, when we're upset,
so when someone triggers us.
And when someone triggers us and we dwell on it, it actually starts to suck our energy. So if you notice that you get tired more often lately, person is more tired and more drained when they are dwelling on what other people have done to them, and where we feel hurt and angry, even if we don't express it and it's something that's internal, even if we don't feel it, but it's this stuff is usually in there. And that's what talk therapy is. Sometimes when you're talking to someone, next thing you know, stuff comes out that you weren't even thinking about because it was really suppressed. But all that stuff makes you tired. And just to address Kabbalistically why, so we're not just here throwing out nice concepts without the why. Kabbalistically, when a person is reactive, we learn that they draw light into the vessel. But because of what's called the law of bread of shame that we learn in Kabbalah 1, which is bread of shame means that if I receive something in a reactive way, I will have to lose it. I have to lose it. So even though it looks like I got what I wanted, that energy is rejected from our vessel, and that's why we feel tired. So it's very much like any kind of drug or anything that we use as a temporary band-aid on our emotions. We feel good and then we feel really bad. Like there's a high and then there's a down. And so the reason why we feel tired is because we get the high of being upset. There's a high there. There's some kind of pleasure from being angry or upset. And then the curtain comes, pushes the light out, and then there's a massive down. And so that's number one. The reason why we want to learn about unconditional love, because what it does is it helps you become a channel of energy so that you always have high energy levels. You always feel youthful and young, and the endorphins will always be racing in your brain, as opposed to the opposite of that, which is I'm constantly bothered by what people do. I'm constantly thinking about them. I'm constantly having conversations with them in my brain, and I'm angry, and that's hatred.
So listen to this example. It's so funny how I always feel like the universe sets me up, and I'm not even realizing how perfect the setup is. Please. But I have somebody that I met with last week, and she was raging, like literally full of anger and upset, and not even cognizant of what she was saying. Like it was to that degree of anger.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed contributed to that, she shared it with me anecdotally. I don't think that she necessarily sees it contributing to the root of the problem, is that she heard something about someone we're working with and has let that stain everything else. She heard something bad about someone.
That we work with?
That I work with. You don't work with them. Don't worry. And so the person that I was talking to last week, basically, she's just holding her breath, waiting for everything to collapse. And that's the energy that she's bringing, is it's all going to hell in a handbasket, so why don't you pass the popcorn? Rather than, and I'm saying I didn't think about it in terms of the opportunity we have this week. I didn't think about it as an example even as I was witnessing it. But there is a perfect example of this person has done nothing to her. There is no, the past that she's holding against her is someone else's past. And she's, I'm sharing it because it's so, I'm sure we've all done that. We've heard something bad about someone and we're just holding our breath, waiting for, it to rear its ugly head, and we're going to get hurt like the other person was hurt, or we're going to be disappointed like the other person was disappointed. So it's a funny example of something, it's so unconscious. But anytime it comes to interacting with this person, she's basically armed. She already has her guns out because she's just waiting for that version that she heard about to appear.
So she's all the adrenaline is always racing. She's always on the defensive, and that's a very draining experience.
Completely. And she's frustrated and she's angry, and it's only compounding the frustration and the anger because she's using someone else's past.
Yep.
Like that's what I'm saying. It's conditional. She is saying, I don't like you because of this, but this that she doesn't like her for hasn't happened to her.
Well, in my little chart here I drew about anger and hatred, the fact that it results in being tired and drained and aging, I think accelerates the aging process. Where does the anger and hatred come from? This is leading into what you just said. So entitlement / expectations are what give birth to anger and hatred. Entitlement and expectation. So when I feel I'm entitled to something, it's different to feel that you're meant to have something. So I think sometimes people, when we're trying to help them transform their belief systems about themselves, their love for themselves, they don't feel they deserve. And we want to transform that to you're meant to receive. That's different than being entitled to receive, because entitlement implies that, yes, I'm meant to receive, but in the way I want, in the fashion that I want, in the time that I want, exactly on my schedule. And when it doesn't happen, we start getting upset and we lose control. And we're totally disconnected from the light of the Creator. That's why expectations are so dangerous also, because when you have an expectation of someone, what do you mean you have an expectation of someone? Why do you have an expectation of someone? Because somehow what they're going to do, or what they promise to do, or what you think they should do, is there to feed your desire to be a consumer. So they don't give you what you want.
Like, I should be treated this way.
I should be treated this way. Now, that's different than I'm meant to be treated this. I am meant to be treated this way. But the fact that someone's not treating you that way, that's not their problem. That's the rules you've laid out in the relationship. Right? You've set the tone of the relationship in a way that it is okay for people to disrespect me or whatever it is, to not give. And obviously I'm oversimplifying it, and each person has a different rabbit hole that they would go through if we break down their situation. But I want to belabor the point that as soon as I feel entitled to something, that's when the anger and the hatred actually begins. And that's when we feel most drained. Now let's flip that to the opposite. What if I say, I am meant to receive, but when I let go and I allow the Creator to bring it in its time. Because if you pick the fruit before it's ripe, you have something that is good, but it's going to taste bitter because you picked the right thing at the wrong time. And I think that's really key. There's a timing to everything besides it being right. If you meet your soulmate, you should also be cognizant of the fact that maybe the time isn't right. Right? There's a timing component. Oh, how do I know when the right time is? That's a whole different discussion. But you can never go wrong by letting go. Constantly letting go. Every time something comes back to you, it actually comes back in a pure vessel of yours. Because when you let go, you purify yourself. Every kind of let go is a purification. So entitlement and expectations need to be transformed to letting go and certainty in the light of the Creator.
What about when somebody did something really terrible to you? I use the example of somebody who's being hateful towards someone who hasn't done anything to her. She's just reacting to something she heard was done to somebody else. I know a lot of people who have genuinely bad experiences. The easiest example to look at is exes. Exes can be really terrible. They're really great when they're not your ex, but once they float into ex territory, I mean, my husband and I, sometimes we have these conversations like, how can people be so terrible? Not in a accusatory way, but more in a observational way. Like, what happens? Sometimes people go through things and they just become so vindictive, so revengeful, so bitter. And how is it possible to love someone that wants to wrong you so, that wants to harm you so? I don't mean physically. We can go into that in a second, but just someone who takes advantage of you, someone who doesn't care what the consequences of their actions on you. What do you tell people when they're in a situation like that?
And this is why it's so important to have a connection to this wisdom. And I always go back to, if you haven't taken Kabbalah 1, you got to take Kabbalah 1. Because what Kabbalah 1 offers is not how to live the life you have and just be better at it. It's actually showing you there's a whole nother system, a whole nother set of rules that we should be adhering to, that if we do, the life that we want will unfold. And the question of how can someone even be so negative? This is just a stupid question. I'm not saying you asking it is stupid, but there's actually no point. Wherever that answer to that question will take you will not take you to anywhere that you will feel good or even get the answers that you want.
Like it'll probably make things worse.
It's a endeavor that doesn't yield the result you want because you're asking the wrong question. The question that we should be asking is, who do I want to be? That's it. Who do I want to be? What kind of a person do I want to be? Instead of having a philosophical discussion about how other people are, or where they came from, or why their brains work that way, or what must have happened in their childhood. None of that even matters, because the Creator controls everything. And if I'm meant to meet somebody who's disrespectful because I need to learn something and I need to grow, I'm going to meet that person, regardless of if they planned to hurt me, didn't plan to hurt me, like it doesn't matter. You cannot control the people. You can just control the vessel that is you. So as we grow our consciousness, as we purify our fears and our habits and our negativity and our addictions, we attract a new destiny that has new people. So you just spent this whole time analyzing this one person, but you just shifted to a new destiny. This person's already expired. So why do I even need to understand who this person is? You just expire them by going to your next level. So this is I think that word, expiration, is really what's most important. Imagine that you move into a hotel for a couple of days because you're on vacation. Are you now buying nice art, painting the walls, moving the furniture around, decorating the hotel room? No, because in 3 days this hotel is going to be expired. You're going to move on. You're going to go to another country, another city. You're going to go back home, whatever it is. So there's no point in trying to analyze the people around you because they will constantly become expired as you grow and as you change. So that's it. And that's the simplicity. That's what Kabbalah is teaching. Kabbalah is teaching you to stay simple in the way you approach life and the way you approach yourself.
Okay, so let's talk about people who are bad. Before it was subjective. Now we're being objective, right? There are people, and maybe we don't know them personally. Yeah. There's a lot of people that you can turn on the news and find no shortage of people who are malicious, evil, I dare say. And I'm not talking about politicians, by the way. I know there's a lot of people who might say that the politicians are evil as well. A few weeks ago in in the United States, there was a weekend where there was like 17 shootings, right? How can we look at those people that, yes, you can say hurt people, but that's something that we tell ourselves so that we can muster some sort of compassion for a broken system, a broken mental health system, a broken people don't have the resources to raise their children in a healthy way. At the end of the day, I think it's important that we clarify why, even though there's people out there that don't deserve, might not, in the physical realm deserve the compassion or empathy or kindness, why it's better for me to muster that kindness or to muster that compassion rather than be okay with sitting and stewing in hatred.
What I'm hearing is, instead of kind of talking about the specifics of stuff that happens and doesn't happen, I kind of always go back to, what is it that you want? Each one of us wants to feel good. That's really what it comes down to. And when a person comes to me and asks me all these questions, what about this, what about that? I say, look, you want to feel good, don't you? This is why you came here. This is why you don't pay us the good money to help you. You just want to feel good, right? So if you want to feel good, let's just learn how you can feel good. Let's learn how, not just temporarily, but long term. And guess what? When you live by the system, the spiritual system that does make you feel good, you're also going to make a lot of other people feel good. And you're going to spread that consciousness, and you're going to spread that light, you're going to spread that wisdom, and you're going to affect a lot of people. And we have no idea. Think about it. We have no idea of all the we've taught between us thousands of classes, thousands of nights of classes, and we think maybe. And I saw this yesterday because we had a whole discussion in the last Kabbalah too. It was around death and suicide. Suicide was a big one, and it's almost like everybody has either attempted it, knows someone who's gone through suicide. Like, it was actually something that a lot of people were suppressing. And so the discussion, what I realized was, even though we think we're just teaching nice concepts about don't be reactive, have a better life, have better relationships, treat your spouse better, whatever, there are things that are happening on a macro level that we have no idea. Like, one person in there who might have done something horrible or hurt somebody in another way or destroyed something. I know people who are going to destroy companies and destroy themselves and destroy families. But because they learned this wisdom, they just paused and they used a new framework of how to live their life. That negative ripple effect.
So you're saying like, okay, anytime I turn on the TV, which I rarely do, I don't feel good afterwards.
Yeah, so you're already thinking way down ahead, right? I'm talking to the guy. I can remember a guy a decade ago who his addiction was he loved being a homewrecker. Like he loved finding women who were already married and seducing them. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's see. Let's try to.
Does he have a website?
Yeah.
How does he market his services?
Yeah. Let's. It's like one of those like Tinder swindler type characters. So
Wow.
let's understand what's happening. Okay. So now he learns Kabbalah, and I said, look, I hear you. You want pleasure. I get it. There's a lot of pleasure you get from being with all these women. I mean, and I'm not going to dispute that. If you feel this pleasure, I'm not going to now tell you, be a good guy. Don't go for this pleasure. I said, this is a lot of pleasure. But let me tell you something. If I could offer you something that has a little bit more pleasure, would you take it? He said, I'm all ears. And so this was, okay, I said, give me 3 months. Take Kabbalah 1, 2, 3, whatever. And let's just start letting go. Let's start purifying this desire you have, because I think there's bigger desires inside of you that we can explore. And long story short, so this person changes their behavior. And so let's say maybe there's 10 women that he didn't go seduce. There's 10 marriages that he didn't destroy. 10 families that he didn't destroy. Maybe 30 children or 20 children who now don't have extra fighting in the home between the mom and the dad because the dad found out that the mom did this, whatever. Those 20 children then have better schools, better grades, better everything, more self-esteem, more self-love. And then that goes forward. Because if they got hurt, if they saw their mom cheating, then they start cheating, and then boom, 20, 30 years later, something happens where there's a mass painful thing, right? One person kills somebody else, hurts somebody, whatever it is. Now, all of it came down to this one person just working on his tikkun, working on himself and having a better life. And then those women had better lives, and so on and so forth. So the point of what I'm trying to say is, let's all start focusing on removing our own issues, because that will have a massive ripple effect, not 10, 20, 30 years down the line. These days, it's weeks across the nation and across the world, and we don't realize it. We don't realize it, but it has this massive, massive. Like, I could be walking down the airport and just, maybe everyone's just in a bad mood, but then there's one person who's just like smiling and happy. And I'm like, oh, you know what? And then maybe they smile at you and then you feel good. And then I realize, for maybe the next 10 minutes, I have a better mood because this person's, and then I touch 20, 30 more people. Like, we don't realize the power of being the light, acting like the light. I know I didn't answer your question directly.
No, I think that was such an important point to make. I would never have thought to go there at all. I was thinking about the pleasure principle from the other side, which is being more in touch with feeling good. And I think I shared this a couple of years ago. It seems to be, I hope it's okay with everybody that I share a version of it again. I was working with somebody who was really active on social media about down with this person, right? Super canvassing, campaigning for the end of bring this person down. And we had a conversation about it. And she said, well, I'm just so angry and I don't like this person that I've become. And I was like, well, don't be that person. Like, look at the very clear steps. You just told me you wake up in the morning, you turn on your computer, you start to read the latest headlines, you start spamming all your friends and all your contacts with the articles about how terrible this person is, and then you start answering the comments on the posts you made yesterday where people are trying to tell you to be busy with other things. The whole social media campaign to end people kind of thing. And we got to the conclusion that she is angry, she's anxious, she's fearful, she's short with people, she's impatient, all because this goes right back to the first thing David said. She's taking perfectly nourishing, valuable energy and locking it in a place where she can't access it. Where she is literally, and this is the whole, I said 2 minutes ago, turning on the TV and watching the news and just feeling awful about it. If you're doing something that makes you feel awful, and I don't, sometimes we do things where, let's say, for example, we go to visit someone who's in the hospital. It's a good thing to do, but we may feel down afterwards or heavy. I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things. There is definitely merit and value in getting outside of your comfort zone for the sake of, David used a great example a second ago, smiling when you don't feel like it, right? You're walking down the terminal, you have no reason to smile, but you smile anyway, and you have no idea how that's going to affect others. You go to visit somebody in the hospital or go to visit somebody who may be feeling lonely, and even though it may be a little bit intense for you, the value is 100 times fold your inconvenience or your feeling heaviness. I think it's important that all of us this week we do that, as David would call it, an audit. What are the things that we're doing that have that downhill value, that don't uplift us, that don't, again, if you have something that you need to do for your job that isn't motivating and exciting and inspiring, you may still have to do it. I'm talking more about the mindless behaviors like checking the headlines on your phone or waking up or watching TV at the end of the night and you feeling drained and sad and hopeless about where the world is going. Take account of those things. You may have somebody, by the way, a friend that you talk to, that you're talking to her only because you're afraid of losing her or him, or there's some very limited, lacking reason that you're continuing to stay in touch. But you realize after you get off the phone with them, you feel gross, or you feel like I need a gallon of ice cream now because I'm so drained and empty. Be conscious of those things, because at the end of the day, when a person acts out of rage and anger and hatred, it's never suddenly. That's really what I meant to say. It's never suddenly. It's an aggregate of different moments, different situations where we allowed our energy to be drained, where we put our energy into something that's not viable, where we acted out of accordance with the laws of the universe, and eventually that darkness gets the upper hand and takes over. There's a lot of stuff in the Zohar, the main work of Kabbalah, that talks about the dangers of anger and hatred. And the whole reason, it's so funny because there's such a stark example of a woman who she keeps on, like, what's the word? Egging her husband on. Is that the right word?
Yeah. Yeah. Depends on where you're going with it. Yeah.
Why do they get all the power? Why do they get all the attention? You're just as smart as they are. Why aren't you doing something about it? Sounds like a sitcom from the 80s, right? She's every night he comes home and she's telling him, you deserve as much respect as they do. There's nepotism. What are they doing over there? And he was perfectly happy in his job. He wasn't looking at the grass, his neighbor's lawn. He was doing his job, and the Kabbalists talk about the danger, like she's poisoning the well, basically. And there was a whole chaotic situation that unfolded from it as a result. But I think that that's one of the reasons that we really need to see what in our environment is poisoning the well. If you don't feel good after reading what happened over the weekend while you did your digital detox and you didn't know what was going on, then you get back on your phone and you realize, wow, terrible. Why did I should stay off my phone more often. So stop checking your phone or delete the news app. That doesn't mean you're putting your head in the sand. It doesn't mean I'm not saying put your head in the sand. I'm saying until you can be a better manager of your energy, which is your most valuable resource, don't give it to Apple News. Or sorry, maybe I shouldn't say, don't give it to the app that's draining your spiritual battery, because that's really what it is. And this is the week it's going to be so much more black and white for us. So pay attention to it.
Well, as we wrap up here, I just want to share what is an actionable takeaway for people, because it's got to be simple. If it's not simple, we're not going to do it. Every time you're starting to feel that you're consumed by an outside energy, which is this feeling of anger and hatred and dwelling, Just take a step back and realize that there are expectations here. And expectations are poisonous. Just let go completely. It all comes down to trusting the light of the Creator. Trusting that universal force of goodness. And you got to just try it. You got to just let go and say, you know what, I'm going to trust this process and not try to control it. That's actually what transforms hatred into love. Because when you do that and it works, you actually love. It's not that you love the people, you love the process. And then loving the process makes you love the people. And that's why. Just constantly step back. Realize that nothing is worth you losing control of yourself, of your consciousness, and of your light. Losing control of your light. This is very powerful. You got to keep your light. You got to not let these outside forces hijack your consciousness. So that's it. That's it for this week.
That is it. If you could remember that at 24/7, what couldn't you do? That is also the hardest thing, is to be so conscious all the time and stay in that space that David was just talking about. So if you aren't sure what David just said, rewind a little bit, write it down. That's everything. That's everything. That's all the incentive that you need to love for no reason, to let go of the grudges, to forgive, to not bother putting that energy, allowing that energy in your life anymore. Weekly Energy Boost is available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You can follow us on all social media, Weekly Energy Boost. We have a website as well, weeklyenergyboost.com, where we put different things that we're excited about and opportunities we want to offer our listeners. Please pause right now, and if you haven't already, rate and review so that we can reach even more people. Every week we do, and it's all because of you. And we'll see you next week on the Weekly Energy Boost.